here. He'll be standing here. So, no, that's okay. Well, we'll do that way. So, thank you very much for coming to today's event. I hope you're able to hear me okay. Welcome to this side event brought to you by, in partnership with FAO, WWF, EDF, GICSRD, Earfish, CONAPAC, the University of West Indies, World Fish, and indeed in partnership with the government of Somalia and IGAD as well. Really an immense pleasure to welcome you to this very important event titled Avoiding the Perfect Storm, Enabling Aquatic Foods Climate Solutions Through Policy, Science, and Finance. My name is Essam Yassin Mohammed. I am the Director General of World Fish, and I'll be moderating today's session. Aquatic food production and its dependent communities are among the most exposed and vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. Addressing these impacts is a prerequisite for vulnerable communities, including small-scale fishers and fish farmers, to maintain food and nutrition security, but also fight poverty. On the other hand, despite the high vulnerability, the aquatic food sector can provide critical climate change adaptation and mitigation solutions as well, which represents significant opportunities for shared prosperity. I was really struck when I came across a study that said if we were to restore our fish stocks today, globally, we'll be able to sink 1.6 billion tons of CO2 a year. So here is a very, if you don't mind me saying, a passive solution if we were just to take action in the sustainable management of fisheries and enhancing the ability of the ocean and its ecosystem to help us sink a significant amount of CO2 is one avenue, but also through best management practices as well in fish farming. There's a lot of evidence out there that demonstrates significant reduction in ecological footprint more broadly, but also in greenhouse gas emissions. And therefore, we firmly believe that a sustainable and equitable aquatic food system through fisheries and aquaculture could put our food systems on a low-emission development pathway. And today, very honored to have with us today Mr. Hassan Haji Ibrahim, who's a senior advisor to the Minister of Fisheries and Blue Economy of Somalia, and Dr. Ishate Dejen, who's a program manager for sustainable environment protection with the Intergovernmental Authority for Development, IGAD. For those of you who are not aware of IGAD, IGAD is the regional body for the Horn of Africa, which has 8 member states. And we have my good friend, Dr. Donovan Campbell as well from the University of West Indies, from the Global Institute for Climate Smart and Resilient Development. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us today. And what was going to happen now is we're going to have 2 sections to this event, to this session. The first session will bring perspectives from government and regional bodies, but also academic institutions proactively working in those climate vulnerable sections of our world. And if I may, Mr. Hassan Haji Ibrahim, if I may start with you. We're eager to hear from you about the climate-related challenges that Somalia is dealing with at the moment, but also more specifically, the coastal communities or fishing dependent communities in Somalia. But equally, I think people in the room are also equally interested in learning about the actions being taken to mitigate the ill effects of climate change on these communities as well. So, Mr. Hassan Haji Ibrahim, please.
Thank you very much. First of all, I might give my thanks to FAO for organizing this, and thanks for the moderator for giving me this opportunity today to address one of the fundamental challenges that Somalia today is facing, which is the climate change. As we speak, I'm not here to debate the world. I think this is a conference of the parties 28. So by now everybody knows the problem of the climate change. That's why we're here, the scientifically and the causes and all of these things. I'm not here to say it. It's a waste of time because I have limited time. Somalia, as we speak now, we suffered, I think, for the third or fourth time El Nino in this year, and there is several towns that are on the brink of disappearing because of the water. Also, just several bridges collapsed. Entire communities, even no, there is no way that the government can reach it. So the suffer that we have and the amount of pressure that we have because of the climate change is immense and is tremendous. And the ability to cope and tackle is also just another issue. The question that you've addressed me, I want to face the solutions and what we think is a solution. Somalia is one of the victims of the climate change. I worked as a climate change negotiator for 2011 and 2012. Also, I was a lead spokesperson of the least development countries at the time for asking a lot of adaptation funds. And you all know, that money pledged after pledge after pledge and never materialized. But now we need to adapt those problems, and we need to look the solution for our own capability. What the government of Somalia at the moment is looking is how can fishing sustain us in a climate change. The world is growing. The population, I think, is on track of 10 billion for 2050. While reducing the cause, it's a challenging. There is a lot of the answer is very complex. How we can feed ourselves. So there's a groundbreaking several reports that been overlooked, which is called Blue Food Assessment. Mm-hmm. This Blue Food Assessment, the finding is the previously under-recognized solution. It's a C. I want to highlight today. In Somalia, 1974, there was a big drought. And the Somalis, those who maybe don't know, it's a pastoralist community, and we depend on agriculture and land livestock. In 1974, then the government, military government, what they did is those who affected, the impacted of the drought in the northern part of Somalia have been relocated to Somalia, a pilot project, and then resettled in this agriculture and the fishing communities. Some of them become very successful fishing community. That is 1974, 50 years ago. The government at the moment, just we look at that, and then we are developing two strategy called Fish for Emergency, and the other thing is Fish for Development. The Fish for Emergency is the people whose livelihood depended on agriculture and livestock who became the urban area and live by handout of the international community, WFP, and so on and so on. Because of not only the climate change, also just security issue, because of we are struggling for the last 15, 17 years. The homegrown terrorist is called Al-Shabaab, which the government now is fighting heavily, and just we're gaining ground. So those people to relocate to the fishing area, we cannot make them farmers. To copy 1974, the achievement, that's one of the excellent good practices that we know, and we've done it, and those who did it just available. We asked a lot of funders, and we got a lot of support from the international community, USAID among them, bilateral and multilateral. Those people to train them to become a fisherman, and generate employment, get food security, not only just, for as a food, also just a source of protein. That is one of, and those who have been in the industry or those coastal communities also, we are doing at the moment, giving them mobile kiosks. The energy and all of these infrastructures, to keep the fish fresh, we don't able. So what we are, distributing is those mobile kiosks, which the motorbike, we fix it, a small refrigerator or cooler, which helps through the day. Their catch will not go to waste. We've learned during the tuna season, there was some time that the fishermen, they cannot sell it, even though the fish consumption in Somalia, the urban area, is very high. When the catch is very much, they cannot save it, they have to throw it out. So just we got this solution. The other things that is for the emergency, relocate IDB, train them and equip them with the fishing gears and all of these things. But the other major milestone that we're going to do is fish for development. That flagship also, just we are partnering with at the moment some EU nations. Specifically, we're aiming the Norway, which is amazing country, which has done a lot of good things in their country, and just we are copying that. To get a proper infrastructure, value chain, Somalia has an opportunity to supply the neighbors, specifically, let's say in Ethiopia, landlocked nation, 100 million. Another Kenya also just have access of limited, sea also. But in Ethiopia is the biggest market. There is religious practice that the people fast and they don't eat any proteins, but they only use tuna, those cans. It's another big market, and the demand is very high. Another opportunity is Somalia. Now we joined the East African community, also just to giving us another opportunity to supply. But this, it takes years. I think in time, maybe just we'll be able to have and cope and adapt to the climate change. I think this is what I have to share because of the limited time, and anything that comes follow up, I'm here to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think this conversation is getting more interesting, so I thought I would come and join you here. No, this is really wonderful. I think it's really great to hear the lived experience from Somalia, particularly giving the historical perspective as well. Maybe partly by accident in terms of how IDPs or internally displaced people in Somalia over the decades found a viable alternative livelihood opportunity through aquatic foods, and therefore, if we were to invest in aquatic foods as a buffer for climate resilience, I think it makes it even more critical now in terms of how it can help build the resilience of communities. But also, I think your point came across very clearly about when you talk about aquatic foods beyond the commodity with just fish. I think we need to look at the entire system, the aquatic food system, meaning that we need to invest in an infrastructure, be it in reducing post-harvest loss and waste, for example, and other necessary infrastructures as well in order to build the resilience. I think that's really clear. Thank you very much, Mr. Hassan Ali Ibrahim. So I think it's a nice segue in a way, because you started your intervention by saying we're not here to debate about climate change. I totally agree with you. And but there is part of climate change that's already happened. The damage has been done. So therefore, we have to learn to live with it. And part of doing that is by enhancing people's abilities to predict climate shocks, but also being able to respond to those climate shocks as well. So that would be a nice segue, I thought, to bring in Dr. Ishete Dejen, because I know for a fact that IGAD has this fascinating initiative called the Climate Prediction Center, which I believe has been really instrumental in enabling people's abilities to predict and by doing so being able to respond to the impacts of climate change. And with that sort of initiative from IGAD, Dr. Ishete, if you don't mind giving us some success stories, or not so successful, but some lessons to be learned as well from that initiative in the region, which is one of the most highly vulnerable parts of the world as well. So, Dr. Ishete, please.
Thank you very much, moderator. Colleagues, I would like to thank FAO, World Fish, and other partners who organize this platform, and of course, my colleague. IGAD, you have already mentioned, it's a regional economic bloc, the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, that contains 8 countries in the Horn of Africa, starting Djibouti up to the recent country, South Sudan. IGAD mainly established to combat drought. The region that we are coming, where my brother Haji, in our bloc, more than 40 million people are now food insecure. We are 3.5% of the world population in the 8 member states, but we are the largest food aid recipient in the world. And it's the most vulnerable area. That's why IGAD is established to combat drought and desertification. Currently, its mandate is expanded into peace and security, agriculture and environment, health and social, as well as regional economic integration. In IGAD, we have some initiatives. The core of the region that we are battling, the food security situation is worsened, especially due to the failed rain for the last consecutive 5 years. Haji has already mentioned it. There is a compounded effect on food security, food and nutrition security we are facing, and there was a triple effect recently. Desert locust infection, flooding, and COVID-19. This affects the production system, the food system. We have analyzed as a regional economic community what is the impact, and also the Russia and Ukraine war greatly affected our food system because of the input supply, especially fertilizer and so on. Our head of state, 2011, there was a drastic drought. Our head of states assembled together and established IGAD Drought Disaster Sustainability Initiative. It's a 15 years initiative. We have finished 2 terms that address the issue of climate change. And we have also other initiatives like regional adaptation strategy, which are adopted before yesterday in the presence of our executive secretary. We have several initiatives at regional level. Our member states gave us a mandate to develop regional policy. You know, the region, the society are interlinked in terms of culture, in terms of destiny. As you know, climate change, as IGAD, we are collected together because climate is not with a boundary to a specific country. Climate specifically affects regional because of the regional location. So as a regional economic community, we want to do collective action. In IGAD, we think regionally, but we act nationally. We bring member states together for policy formulation. Haji was saying value chain, regional fish trade. To do that, IGAD should be there to harmonize policy. Ethiopia, 123 million people. Somalia has huge fish resource. Ethiopia is importing from Norway salmon with the big hotels. but there is huge resource. So if we circulate the economy in the region, it will be interesting.
Sorry, Shiti, I think this is really fascinating. Again, I'm really loving this context that you're giving, particularly on how climate change doesn't recognize national boundaries, and it's a shared problem, and therefore that requires a shared or a collective action, right? And how is that your center enabling that collective action at the regional level?
Yes. As I said, we develop regional policy, regional climate responsive policy for food and nutrition security. We formulate regional blue economy strategies that address. But we have one center of excellence, a very advanced one. It's called IGAD Climate Prediction and Application Center. Even if it is IGAD organization, we are serving the Greater Horn of Africa. When we say Greater Horn of Africa, IGAD plus EAC. So that center...
EAC being the East African
Community. So that center is internationally accredited with a good center of excellence. That provides crop monitor, that provides weekly forecast, that provides monthly forecast, climate monitoring, and food security.
Excellent.
Every month we have food security and nutrition working group analysis where the input data come from it's with FAO or UNHCR, all organizations sit together in Nairobi. ICPAC provide the data. Then with development partners, we've even advise how much food deficient the region is.
Sure.
And it provides preparation. And the other practical product that is changing the life of the community is based on the climate forecast, based on the rainfall distribution for 4 months, the farmers will prepare their land, and then also they grow early maturing variety. If the rainfall is short, ICPAC will tell them the rainfall is short, grow early maturing varieties that can reach in 1 month. We have 1 month rain, find a crop that will grow in 1 month. And also recently, currently now there is a sort of flooding in East Africa. There is high rainfall already forecasted. In Djibouti, where IGAD headquarters is there, we were told to prepare by ICPAC. Djibouti, you don't see rain, but they say rain is coming, and people are panicked because we haven't seen rain. And there is no drainage. Immediately, if there is a drop of water, we are at the sea level. So we prepare ourselves.
Right.
So it has 2 layers of advantage. One for policymakers and development partners. The other one is for the grassroots, for the coastal community, pastoralists. Especially our region, 70% is arid and semi-arid land. They are pastoral. The rainfall forecast is critical for forage production. And the rainfall forecast is important for the sea level, for fishing community. So this is what we are doing.
Thank you very much. Excellent. That's really brilliant. In fact, I think you expanded it very nicely. It doesn't just stop at predicting the climate shocks, but also it has advisory services as well. As you rightly said, in terms of it's not just about the early warning system, but how do you cope with that, and therefore what are the advisory services that come hand in hand with it. It's really fascinating and really keen to learn more about that. Maybe, we could spend days talking about this. And I recognize a familiar face here in the room as well, Dr. Romana, who's been working on a similar topic in Bangladesh with fish farmers as well. So I'm mentioning that because I think this could be a good opportunity for us to know each other and network as well, right? So thank you very much, both. Now, again, building on the point that was made earlier about how climate change could be or is indeed a shared experience, and therefore the need for a collective action. Donovan, sorry, just first name. We go back in time with Donovan. We were members of the World Ocean Assessment group of experts of the UN, and we worked together. So I really admire and value the camaraderie and the friendship. So thank you, Donovan. Now moving from the Horn of Africa across the continent and oceans to the Caribbean, if you can share with us in terms of the Caribbean perspective, both in terms of policy response, but also, if possible, some innovative financing mechanisms as well to address the climate change impacts and being able to, address the challenge that were mentioned earlier. If you can shed light into the Caribbean experience, particularly from a policy response and the role of the academic institutions in working closely with governments, but also grassroots level or fishing communities as well. Donovan, please.
Thank you, SM, and thanks to the organizers for providing this opportunity for me to share some thoughts on our experience in the Caribbean. I was particularly intrigued when I saw the topic, avoiding the perfect storm. Intrigued because I believe that as large ocean states, the narrative is that we're small islands, but we see ourselves as large ocean states. Our futures are very much dependent on the ocean. I believe so. And there are many policies and initiatives that I could highlight, but I'm going to choose one related to health. And in our region, 79% of deaths are attributed to non-communicable diseases. That's higher than the global average of 73%. Yeah, and we are increasingly searching for solutions to all of these problems, but not in isolation. Yeah, because the food problem is also a health problem. Yeah, and where we see opportunities from food, from within the food system to tackle health issues, we want to capitalize on those opportunities. And so when we look at those numbers and that big problem that we're facing, from a health perspective alone, we can see why our region is so focused on the aquatic food system as a pathway for building a more resilient society. Yeah, and a lot of the investments and efforts that are going into the food system in that particular area are geared towards tackling that problem. But if we dive deeper, we see where the whole world is now increasingly recognizing that there's something there, and we should be paying more attention to aquatic food systems from the perspective of the micronutrients that are provided and the sheer diversity of aquatic foods that exist. And you use seaweed, as an example, and there are now studies coming out to show how much land you can spare if you incorporate seaweed in diets and all of those things. But also from a gender perspective, in the Caribbean, we have a new economy of seaweed farming being developed in St. Lucia and in other areas that is gaining traction, and this is being led by women. And so we're seeing opportunities now from that perspective to diversify not only the economies at that level, but also to be more inclusive in terms of our approach to developing livelihoods in these areas. The Caribbean is highly exposed to multiple hazards, yeah? And, we are one of the most disaster-prone regions in the world, yeah? And you asked about about financial, systems being put in place. We are experimenting with a number of social protection systems for small-scale producers, if you may. One of them is the livelihood protection policy, that is being rolled out across the Caribbean. And what is interesting about this policy as a social protection mechanism, because what we're trying to do is we want to close the protection gap. We know that there are some people who might be left behind, because of whatever reason. They're too vulnerable to partake in systems that can protect them. So what this product is doing is it's making available to small-scale fishers along the value chain an insurance product. Should in case there's a disaster, and it's a parametric insurance product. So whenever there's a trigger, you automatically get a payout. And I believe that just having a creative mix of these types of products, helps to build resilience in the system. And so we are learning from that, and we're seeing a lot of benefits at the national and the regional level. We have the CRIF system, which member countries are a part of, that helps to provide assistance within 14 days after disaster. Now, in terms of what our university is doing and my role, we have established this Global Institute as a way to support our governments across the region by providing scientific support in terms of various projects and programs. And one of these programs, one example of these programs is the work that we did with FAO a few years ago called Stewardfish. And Stewardfish was led by my colleagues from the Caville campus in Barbados, Sermes. And that was a fascinating project, because if we should pan out a bit, we see where, yes, there are all these benefits, and the potential within the aquatic food system is great, but the distribution of these benefits at the moment is something that we need to pay attention to. The distribution of the benefits of aquatic food systems across countries is highly unequal. And so what Stewardfish sought to do was to build capacity along the value chain to increase participation in decision-making processes, in several islands across the Caribbean. And it was a very successful project. So I just wanted to use that intervention, SM, to give you a picture as to what we're doing in the Caribbean.
This is really brilliant, and thank you very much for sharing your insight and wisdom, Donovan. So I think I do agree with you when you said about the interconnectedness. We cannot redact this issue into one single issue. When you talk about climate change, as much as it's a quest for ecological restoration, it's also a quest for social justice. It's a quest for social transformation, hence the link with health and so on and so forth. But also, I think the initiative on extending social protection to small-scale aquatic food producers is extremely key. However, in many cases as well, this is really great, refreshing to hear, but there are many cases where you see as well there is an institutional bias against the small-scale aquatic food producers as well, where, from a legal framework point of view, where fishing is not necessarily recognized as a vocation, as a profession, and therefore that institutional bias, or in many cases, excludes these communities from accessing those much-needed social protection schemes, and therefore I think this offers an opportunity for cross-learning. But also I think, as promised, this session is going to be divided into two, so we've heard the perspectives from Somalia, IGAD, and the Caribbean. I think what has become very clear to me, at least at a personal level, is that these are indeed regions and countries that are most vulnerable to climate change, but they are not passively waiting for handouts, right?
Right, yeah, absolutely.
They're not waiting for handouts in order to solve these problems. Actions are being taken at a local level, at a national level, despite the odds of challenge with resources and financing, etc. But I think the actions are there. So we need to work with those communities, with those institutions, with those governments, in order to accelerate the impact, the positive impact we want to see, and build resilience of communities who work day and night to feed the growing population. So with that said, let me thank the first set of panelists, my brother, Hassan Haji Ibrahim from Somalia, and Dr. Ishete Dejen from IGAD, and Dr. Donovan as well from the West Indies. Please give them a big round of applause. Thank you very much. Now, time allowing, before we go to the second session, the second part of this today's session, we're going to play a short video. Claudia, is the video ready? If not, we'll proceed with the panel discussion. Okay.
समुंदर असां जे लाइ वॾी हिकु नेमत आहे। समुंदर असां हिकु समुंदर जा शेरी आहियूं। असां समुंदर जा बाज़ी आहियूं। बाज़ आहियूं जीअं बाज़ जेको उड़ंदो आहे न हवा में, असां समुंदर जे करे ईअं उड़ंदा आहियूं। मुंहिंजो नालो मोहम्मद सलीम, ज़ात दबलो, ॻोठ मीरू दबलो, शेर किटी बंदर, उन खां पोइ समुंड, छठा ऐं पाकिस्तान। असां हर हमेशा ज़िंदगी खां वठी माहीगिरी कयासीं, मच्छी त असांजे लाइ करे इहो ई जेको सो ज़रियो आहे। मौसमियाती जेकी तब्दीली आहे न असांजे इलाइक़े ते इलाही असरु कयो आहे न। जीअं पहिरीं असां वटि जेके ॿुधायो न सवेरे नंढियूं नंढियूं नेरियूं हूंदियूं त असांखे रोज़गार करण में आसानी मिलंदी हुई नंढी नंढी नेरियुनि में। हाणे नंढियूं नेरियूं जेके आहिनि सो वॾियूं थी वियूं आहिनि। त इहे जेको उन्हनि जी ख़तमु थी विया न ज़मीन जेकी कंदा हुआ खेती बाड़ी, त उहो मिठो पाणी ख़तमु थी वियो त उनजे करे जेके सो उन्हनि जूं आबादी जेकी हुयूं सो ख़तमु थी वियूं। त हुननि सभिनी कारोबार कया आहिनि माहीगिरी जा। सम्झो त 1000 माहीगर, जेको मिसाल हाणे जेका आहिनि उहो 10,000 माहीगर थी विया आहिनि। त जेकी असां सन्नी मच्छी मारे छॾींदा हुआसीं, हींअर असां उन्हनि खे मच्छीअ खे GIAR करे सुठे रेट में विकिणंदासीं। पहिरीं असां वटि इहो सिस्टम कोन हो, हाणे जेको उहो सिस्टम असां वटि आहे। तुमर जेको आहे न तुमर मैंग्रोव्स, हीअ असांजी ज़िंदगी आहे। असां हुनखे पहिरीं न पर हाणे सम्झंदा आहियूं त असांजी जेकी ज़िंदगी आहे न उन सां तुमर जेको आहे न बिल्कुलु जुड़ियल आहे। हींअर जेको जिथे बि असां जॻह ॾिसूं था त कोशिशि कयूं था त उते तुमर लॻायूं। इहो जेको असांजो कमु शुरू आहे मैंग्रोव्स ते ऐं तालाब ते, मच्छी ऐं केकड़ा, इहे असांजो तमामु सुठे में सुठो हिकिड़ो मिसाल बि आहे ऐं सुठे में सुठो असांजो कारोबार बि आहे। त इहे जेकी मुंहिंजी कहानी आहे न, अगरि जंहिं बि जॻह ते पहुचाई वञे त शायदि उते को अहिड़ो ग़रीब हुजे जंहिंजो फ़ाइदो थी वञे। त आउं चवां थो त इन ॻाल्हि खे हर मुल्क ताईं पहुचायो, हर जॻह ताईं, जिथे बि ग़रीब तबिको रहे थो, जिथे बि ग़रीब माण्हू रहनि था, कारोबार जंहिं वटि कोन्हे त उन जे लाइ करे जेको सो कारोबार वधायो वञे त जीअं हू पंहिंजे पेरनि ते।
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think that really helps to put things into perspective, particularly hearing and listening and seeing the plight of the aquatic food dependent communities or aquatic food producers across many regions, particularly in the tropics, but also the actions that are being taken at a local level. So hopefully this puts things into perspective. But I think to help us to further advance in this conversation, I will invite Talay Slibaravi and Gabriel Muswali as well, and Ms. Zoila Bustamante as well to join me here. Thank you very much. Now, I think what we established, of course, this is a long-established fact, but what we have seen is the interconnected nature of the challenge that we face as global citizens, all of us, from Africa to Latin America to the Caribbean, the Pacific. Shared experience, and hence, there's a lot of opportunity for learning from each other as well. But also, what we learned is the heterogeneity of our societies as well. Some being more vulnerable than the others, and I think particularly what I don't want us to miss in this session is the perspective from youth and women groups, or in other words, gender and generation perspective. And Talay Slibaravi, this is not my personal judgment, but from the script that I've been given here, you've been described as a young leader. Okay, a young leader from one of the coastal communities of the Great Sea Reef, which is the longest reef system in the world. And I know, Talay, you work with youth communities and women groups, particularly in the area of locally led adaptation. And I would like you to share with us, again, your perspective, your wisdom. So Talay, please.
My name is Talay. I'm a proud daughter of many generations of fishermen and fisherwomen. My community on Cavell Island of around 19.5 square kilometers of island is entirely dependent on our fisheries resources, and our ocean is our main source of food and protein on a daily basis. Our lives, our education was supported through fishery. My dad, a fisherman, supported our education through fishing. Some of us went through college just entirely from fishing sources. We are made up of many small-scale fishes of women and men. Our food security of ensuring that we have enough food and nutrition for healthy island communities dependent on how well we manage and sustainably our resources, and that it continue to be resilient to the impacts of climate change. Just a few months ago, we had just launched a community network of marine protected areas this year at the World Mangrove Day as one of the key actions to ensure our food security. I came here to cope with a clear message from my community, and that is to recognize the importance of sustainable fisheries for island communities as a key component of adaptation strategy, and that at this COP, this needs to be captured. Captured in the global goal on adaptation and the mitigation work program and in the adaptation finance to ensure that we, the coastal communities, have enough resources and finance to ensure that we resilient of our marine resources for our food security. I was told last night that there is a pushback to include specific reference to oceans in negotiation, adaptation, and mitigations. Our Pacific oceans and our fisheries are not only feeding Fiji, it's feeding everyone all over the world. Our food security is your food security. We need strong commitment to ensure that our aquatic foods, blue foods, and oceans are clearly captured in the outcome of this COP. I was just talking about for us here in Kavewa. I'll talk about Kavewa, where I'm from. Most of the times, like when we go out fishing, we spend an hour or so over here, they stand out there trying to look for their food. They went out fishing, and over the years, the fish stock has declined. So, yeah, for us, it's just a matter of survival. It's not about contributing to these acronyms that we so much hear about, but for us, it's just a matter of survival. So we have worked with youth and women. You know, for women especially, they go out there, they try, you know, whatever way, just to put food on the table. So as a woman, that's one of our, you know, as someone from a village, that's one of our main goals, just to put food, just to make food for our loved ones. Winaka.
Yeah, thank you very much for that incredibly, profoundly touching story and lived experience. And to a degree, I can personally relate to that as well. But also I think it's great that you brought in the perspective from that bigger auditorium as well, where the current negotiations are happening. And I appreciate your frustration on the pushback with respect to or some ocean-related matters, particularly since we have established the fact that for every other breath that we inhale, we owe it to the ocean. And beyond that, of course, as you said, livelihood and food security of communities across the world as well. So my question to you is, A, are you engaging in that space? And if you are, do you feel you are being given the platform to be heard, to be listened as well?
I would say not really, but for all these, you know, climate leaders,
Right.
I would suggest that, you know, a lot needs to go into adaptation and mitigation efforts, capacity building and training, policy support and advocacy, financial support, insurance, because our ocean is our only natural capital. As I was saying in another side event, while we have banks, we have our ocean. So we need international cooperation and partnerships, education and awareness, and also in support of alternative livelihoods for our community-based organizations. You know, that they do not really need a lot, they just need to survive. They need the support to survive. That's the only thing that we're requesting. You know, for our leaders out there, the ones who make decisions, we just need support to survive.
Sure.
Vinaka.
Thank you very much, Saleh. Again, thank you very much. How are we doing time-wise? Can someone tell me? And it's 5 minutes to go. Okay. Now, here is the pressure. Now, maybe quickly, I'll go first with Gabriel Muswali, who's a good friend of some of us here in the room, and also Ms. Zoila Bustamante, who will follow up as well, but will also get translation from Juliana as well. Is it right? Okay. So, so quickly, I think what we want to hear from both of you is maybe very briefly and quickly is if we just focus on solutions and actions being taken at a local level.
Okay, thank you so much, Esam, for that. As a fisherman, I would actually say that we have been involved in the advocacy space because we understand that much as we may talk about policy issues and science and finance, we have to make sure that there is a mechanism to follow up on these issues because we understand that the parties that we deal with have a lot of priority issues that are vying for these particular resources. So our responsibility largely is about engaging with the policymakers to ensure that the policy commitments that have been made are in fact actualized. But we not only just do that, we also engage with grassroots communities where we are operating to ensure that they understand the implication of these policy issues on their livelihood with respect to climate change issues. Yeah. One of the issues, the interventions that we have been able to actually put in place is that of having some kind of exchange program between one of the countries within which we operate, that was Kenya, and Malawi, for the officers from the Malawi Climate Change Department to visit Kenya and understand how our small-scale holders, aquatic food production holders, utilize information from meteorological department to be able to actually undertake fishing activities, so that when there is some kind of they have information on some storm, they do not go they do not go on fishing expedition. So these are some of the issues that we have been able to engage in. We have also been able to engage with the policymakers to be able to understand why they would talk about commitment to policy issues, but with minimal, if at all, financial commitment to these particular policies. So we keep following them, particularly during the budgeting cycles, to ensure that there is some allocation of resources towards climate change issues.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. I think that's very clear in terms of how it's really important that civil society groups work closely, hand in hand, with policymakers, to enhance accountability, but also operationalization of our policies and policy responses as well. So thank you very much. And I should have introduced Gabriel, who is the Programs and Strategy Advisor at the East African Platform for Non-State Actors in Fisheries and Aquaculture, in short, EARFISH. Thank you, Gabriel. And maybe quickly to bring in Ms. Bustamante as well, who is from the National Confederation of Fishermen of Chile, CONAPA, and with some translation. If I may ask Ms. Bustamante to bring in a perspective from communities from Chile, maybe less focus on the challenges, but specifically on actions being taken to mitigate the challenges faced by fishers or fish farmers in relation to climate change. Ms. Bustamante.
Bueno, buenas tardes, muchas gracias por la invitación. Es compleja la pregunta para todos los que estamos aquí, sobre todo los que venimos de la pesca. Yo soy pescador de siempre, de toda la vida. Y las acciones las estamos haciendo los artesanales, pero no los gobiernos. Entonces es complejo, porque nosotros estamos cuidando para que otros no quieran cuidar. Entonces eso también es complejo para nosotros, frustrante. Estamos en áreas de resguardo, nosotros le llamamos áreas de manejo, y en esta área de manejo cuidamos los recursos, los hacemos que generen empleos, alimento para nuestra gente, pero lo hacemos nosotros. Los gobiernos están a 100 años luz, el gobierno de Chile está a 100 años luz mirando lo que nosotros estamos haciendo, pero no está tomando acciones para enfrentar este tema, y es complicado.
Hi, thank you for the invitation, first of all. This is a hard question that you asked me, and it's a hard question to answer for all fisher people. Personally, I'm a fish worker, and when it comes to actions that you asked me about, we are the ones taking these actions. Governments aren't doing it. And this is something complex, because What we are doing is taking care of the environment while others are doing the opposite. And this is very frustrating. What we have as a legal status in my region are management areas, and we use these management areas to care for the environment, to produce food, to feed our peoples, and we are the ones that are doing it. The government is thousands of miles away, and they're doing something else, but they're definitely not doing this.
Estamos viviendo hoy día otra vez la corriente del Niño, y eso ha significado no poder pescar. Las regiones del norte de Chile están más de 5 meses sin pescar. Eso significa no empleo, no alimento. Pero lo estamos enfrentando. ¿Cómo? Repoblando, apoyando el repoblamiento de las algas, apoyando también con ayuda de mitigación a nuestra gente, ver cómo nosotros, pescadores, ayudamos desde una región a otra que ellos tengan cómo vivir. Y tengo la misma frustración que ella, de que aquí no se esté mirando el mar. El océano es gigante, pero el mar es más grande todavía, porque abarca uno solo. Pero aquí nadie lo está viendo, y es una fuente de alimento para millones y millones de personas.
So now we're undergoing the effects of El Niño phenomenon this year, and what that implies for us is no fishing. In certain regions of the country, in the north of the country, we haven't been able to fish for the past 5 months. And what that means is no jobs, no food. However, we're fighting this by repopulating our ecosystems. We're repopulating with seaweed. We're also focusing on mitigation actions. We're thinking about how, as fish workers, we can support each other interregionally, from one region to another, in order to survive, to live. But I feel the same frustration as my colleague, because the sea isn't receiving the attention it deserves. The ocean isn't being seen. And that's what provides us with our food.
Thank you.
Para terminar, hay un elemento que tiene la FAO, que la trabajaron los pescadores artesanales del mundo, que demoramos 4 años en hacerlo, que son las directrices voluntarias para la pesca a pequeña escala y acuicultura. Pero como bien dice, es voluntaria. Si los gobiernos asumieran este desafío, a lo mejor la visión sería diferente de cómo enfrentar hoy lo que estamos viviendo con el cambio climático.
Just to conclude, there's something that we have contributed to, that's a FAO program, which is, we have taken 4 years to develop, and it's the voluntary guidelines for small-scale fishing and aquaculture.
Sure.
If governments actually, but what she focused on is it's voluntary. So if governments actually implemented this, the situation would be very different.
Certainly. No, thank you very much, Ms. Bustamante. And this is really a bitter conclusion. It's one of those things that you don't want it to end, but it has to come to an end. These are the stories, people, these are lived experiences. It's not an abstract, it's not an academic debate. These are lived experiences of people who are dealing with the ill effects of climate change on a day-to-day basis. So I'm profoundly humbled. So I'm so ever grateful for sharing your insights, your wisdom, and your experience with us. And hopefully we all leave this room without a shadow of a doubt that we live in a very unjust world, where the polluters can insulate themselves to a degree from the ill effects of climate change, while those who are dependent on this resource to survive are paying the price on a day-to-day basis. So let's recognize that, and let's take that message and communicate that at every possible platform that we can as well. So please join me in giving a big round of applause to my fellow panelists. Thank you very much. Yeah, so you may join. So if I may beg your indulgence for 5 minutes, sorry, because none of this, the actions, etc., would be possible without proper and adequate financing. And if I may beg your indulgence for 2 or 3 minutes, I want to invite Eric Schwab, who's the Senior Vice President with the EDF, and to quickly share your perspective, Eric, in terms of some innovative financing mechanisms that are out there that would enable us to make the transition to a low carbon food system development pathway, but also aid the adaptation efforts that we've seen from particularly the locally led adaptation as well. So briefly, and then I'll conclude the session.
Thank you, and I'll try to do this very quickly and highlight a couple of things. There's nothing I could do that would top the stories and the experiences that we just heard about. I can just simply try to augment and emphasize some of the solutions going forward. So EDF has been very happy to be a part of the Blue Food Action Coalition, raising the profile of aquatic foods in the global development context. Aquatic foods currently receive less than 1% of global development aid, and we recognize and have heard already how important they are to local communities and fishers around the world. So one of the things the Action Coalition has been trying to do is raise that profile. SDG 14, Life Below the Sea, is the least well-funded of all of the Sustainable Development Goals. So one of the things the Blue Food Action Coalition has been doing is in the policy arena try to raise that profile. The second thing I want to highlight is that, like with lots of food challenges around the world, one of the major issues is loss and waste. And this is especially pronounced in the aquatic food space. In fact, it is probably one of the worst spaces for loss and waste in any food systems, sets of food systems around the world. 1/3 of all of the product is either lost or wasted at the front end or on the consumption side. So if you think about this for a minute, modest investments in refrigeration, storage, transportation can be a huge asset in reducing waste, in maximizing value for fishers and local communities, either for consumption domestically, locally, or in a trade context. The third thing I want to emphasize is, as we saw in that video, and this is one of the things that EDF and some of our partners are particularly proud of, is our work to help to provide the capacities, the tools, the policy framing to local communities to take control of their own destinies in ways that we heard about. And so a big thing that we can do, particularly in a climate change challenged environment, is to give communities the kind of experiences and opportunities that we saw in that video to take control of their own destiny, to have tenure rights, and to take actions based upon local knowledge and the local stewardship responsibilities that are paramount to help to develop sustainable plans even in the face of the climate change that we're experiencing. And there are other examples, but I wanted to highlight a few and just say how pleased that EDF is to be in a partnership capacity supporting many of the communities and experiences like those that we heard about here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric Schwab. Please, please give him a big round of applause. Thank you very much, colleagues. So, just to conclude, really grateful and thankful to all the panelists for sharing the insight, the experience, but also just to take you back to the purpose of this event is to highlight the urgent need for policy science and finance action to reduce vulnerability. And I guess what we take away from this session is the inspiration that we take from the myriads of solutions that we heard about, the actions that's been taken on the ground. So let's work with those communities, with those policymakers, with those civil society groups, with those regional agencies or bodies, in order to accelerate the change that we want to see. And if we do that collectively, I think through sustainable and equitable aquatic food systems, we can still realize a shared prosperity for all under changing climate. So with that positive note, and hopefully a lot of material for inspiration today, again, I apologize for taking slightly longer than the time that was allocated for us, but I think it was been really worthwhile staying and listening to these fascinating stories from all the panelists. And with that, I thank you all, and I wish you a wonderful evening. Thank you very much.